Hello, everyone. Welcome to my show and another episode of Babble. Yes, I am finally getting around to it once again. So, we'll pick up right where we left off with Leviticus chapter 14. The Lord gave Moses the following regulations about the ritual purification of a person cured of a dreaded skin disease. On the day he is to be pronounced clean, he shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall take him outside the camp and examine him. If the disease is healed, the priest shall order that 2 ritually clean birds be brought, along with a piece of cedar wood, a red cord, and a sprig of hyssop. Then the priest shall order that one of the birds be killed over a clay bowl, containing fresh spring water. He shall take the other bird and dip it, together with the cedar wood, the red cord, and the hyssop, in the blood of the bird that was killed. He shall sprinkle the blood 7 times on the person who is to be purified from his skin disease, and then he shall pronounce him clean. He shall let the live bird fly away over the open fields. This person shall wash his clothes, shave off all his hair, and take a bath. He will then be ritually clean. He may enter the camp, but he must live outside his tent for 7 days. On the 7th day he shall again shave his head, his beard, his eyebrows, and all the rest of the hair on his body. He shall wash his clothes and take a bath. Then he will be ritually clean. If you think about it, that all makes sense, and it's all really clever because with the skin disease, it's a sickness. So it's not like oh, banish you, oh, Christic, mystic mumbo jumbo. It's you get rid of the things that have the sickness. Kind of like you don't drink from the same cup who from somebody who's drunk from it is sick and so, so I mean, it kind of makes sense. I think that's kind of cool. It's not just mystic mumbo jumbo. It's like a little commonsensical. I love those parts of the Bible. On the 8th day he shall bring 2 male lambs and 1 female lamb a year old that are without any defects, 5 pounds of flour mixed with olive oil, and half a pint of olive oil. Okay, I just realized I said all that stuff. There is the religious aspect, there is that, but there are things that are commonsensical. So don't don't be like, oh yes, it's totally commonsensical to kill a bird and then dip the other bird in dead bird's blood. Context, please, thank you. Ugh. Then the priest shall take one of the male lambs, and together with the half pint of oil he shall offer it as a repayment offering. He shall present them as a special gift to the Lord for the priest. He shall kill the lamb in the holy place where the animals for the sin offerings and the burnt offerings are killed. He must do this because the repayment offering, like the sin offering, belongs to the priest and is very holy. The priest shall take some of the blood of the lamb and put it on the lobe of the right ear, on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of the right foot of the man who is to be declared ritually clean. The priest shall take some of the olive oil and pour it in the palm of his own left hand. Dip a finger in his right hand in it, of his right hand in it, and sprinkle some of it 7 times there in the Lord's presence. He shall take some of the oil that is in the palm of his hand and some of the blood of the lamb and put them on the lobe of the right ear on the right thumb of the right hand and on the big toe of the right foot of the man who is to be declared ritually clean. He shall put the rest of the oil that is in the palm of his hand on the man's head. In this way he shall perform the ritual of purification. Then the priest shall offer the sin offering and perform the ritual of purification. After that he shall kill the animal for the burnt offering and offer it with the grain offering on the altar. In this way the priest shall perform the ritual of purification, and the man will be ritually clean. Bless me. Sorry, that seemed a little... Anyway, if the man is poor and cannot afford any more, he shall bring for his purification only 1 male lamb as his repayment offering, a special gift to the Lord for the priest. He shall bring only 2 pounds of flour mixed with olive oil for a grain offering, and half a pint of olive oil. He shall also bring 2 doves or 2 pigeons, one for the sin offering and one for the burnt offering. On the 8th day of his purification, he shall bring them to the priest at the entrance of the tent. The priest shall take the lamb and the olive oil and present them as a special gift to the Lord for the priest. He shall kill the lamb and take some of the blood and put it on the lobe of the man's right ear, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The priest shall pour some of the olive oil into the palm of his own left hand, and with a finger of his right hand sprinkle some of it 7 times here in the Lord's presence. He shall put some of the oil on the same place as he put the blood, on the lobe of the man's right ear, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The rest of the oil that is in his palm he shall put on the man's head, and in this way perform the ritual of purification. Then he shall offer one of the doves or pigeons as the sin offering, and the other as the burnt offering with the grain offering. In this way the priest shall perform the ritual of purification. This is the law for the man who has a dreaded skin disease, but who cannot afford the normal offerings required for his purification. As I have said several times before, the Bible has plenty of parts where it repeats itself. And that is kind of, I guess, for significance, because it's like, this is important, so keep this in mind. This is exactly what you do. Which, given the way that some of the people behave in the Bible, they kind of need this is exactly what you do. For example, don't go melting stuff down into gold and making a calf out of it and then saying that's the thing that led you out of Egypt. I still think that's one of the stupidest things I've ever heard of. But I digress. Mildew in houses. The Lord gave Moses and Aaron the following regulations about houses affected by spreading mildew. These were to apply after the people of Israel entered the land of Canaan, which the Lord was going to give them as their possession. Anyone who finds mildew in his house must go and tell the priest about it. The priest shall order everything to be moved out of the house before he goes to examine the mildew. Otherwise, everything in the house will be declared unclean. Then he shall go to the house and examine the mildew. Okay, again, this is kind of sensical. I dig it. The priest shall now I have to catch up. If there are greenish or reddish spots that appear to be eating into the wall, he shall leave the house and lock it up for 7 days. On the 7th day he shall return and examine it again. If the mildew is spread, he shall order that the stones on which the mildew is found be removed and thrown into some unclean place outside the city. After that he must have all the interior walls scraped and the plaster dumped in an unclean place outside the city. Then other stones are to be used to replace the stones that were removed, and new plaster will be used to cover the walls. If the mildew breaks out again in the house after the stones have been removed and the house has been scraped and plastered, the priest shall go and look. If it has spread, the house is unclean. It must be torn down, and its stones, its wood, and all its plaster must be carried out of the city to an unclean place. Anyone who enters the house while it is locked up will be unclean until evening. Anyone who lies down or eats in the house must wash his clothes. If, when the priest comes to look, the mildew has not reappeared after the house has been replastered, he shall pronounce the house ritually clean, because the mildew has been completely removed. To purify the house he shall take 2 birds, some cedar wood, a red cord, and a sprig of hyssop. That sounds familiar. He shall kill one of the birds over a clay bowl containing fresh spring water. Then he shall take the cedar wood, the hyssop, the red cord, and the live bird, and shall dip them in the blood of the bird that was killed and in the fresh water, and he shall sprinkle the house 7 times. Okay, think about this from the other perspective. He's thinking, what are you doing? Glad I'm not that bird, but you're dipping me in its blood? What is this? What did I do? Oh my god. I mean, you think about it, that's kind of disturbing and traumatic. Like, and I'm blowing into the mic. I'm trying to not blow into it. So let's put it down here and then maybe I won't blow into it. So sound changes and stuff. But still, like, think about it from the bird's perspective. Ay, scheiße, begeibe. Anyway, so, and he shall sprinkle the house 7 times. In this way he shall purify the house with the bird's blood, the fresh water, the live bird, the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the red cord. How exactly do you use the rest of those? The cedar wood, the hyssop, and the red cord? What? I don't get it. Then he shall let the live bird fly away outside the city over the open fields. In this way he shall perform the ritual purification for the house, and it will be ritually clean. These are the laws about dreaded skin diseases, sores, boils, or inflammations, and about mildew in clothes or houses. These laws determine when something is unclean and when it is clean. Holy shnikes. Chapter 15. Unclean bodily discharges. The Lord gave Moses and Aaron the following regulations for the people of Israel. When any man has a discharge from his penis, the discharge is unclean, whether the penis runs with it or is stopped up by it. Oh my god. How? I just realized what I said. Oh my gosh. How did I not realize that when I read it the first time? What in the world? Oh my lord. Leviticus, what are you doing? Any bed on which he sits or lies is unclean. This is just awkward. Anyone who touches his bed or sits on anything the man has sat on must wash his clothes and take a bath, and he remains unclean until evening. Sorry, that's an alarm I have for things and stuff. If the man with the discharge spits on anyone who is ritually clean, that person must wash his clothes and take a bath, and he remains unclean until evening. Any saddle or seat on which the man with the discharge sits is unclean. Anyone who touches anything on which the man sat is unclean until evening. Anyone who carries anything on which the man sat must wash his clothes and take a bath, and he remains unclean until evening. If a man who has a discharge touches someone without first having washed his hands, that person must wash his clothes and take a bath, and he remains unclean until evening. Any clay pot that the man touches must be broken, and any wooden bowl that he touches must be washed. After the man is cured of his disease, of his discharge, he must wait 7 days and then wash his clothes and take a bath in fresh spring water, and he will be ritually clean. On the 8th day he shall take 2 doves or 2 pigeons to the entrance of the tent of the Lord's presence and give them to the priest. The priest shall offer one of them as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering. In this way he will perform the ritual of purification for the man. When a man has an emission of semen, he must bathe his whole body, and he remains unclean until evening. Anything made of cloth or leather on which the semen falls must be washed, and it remains unclean until evening. After sexual intercourse, both the man and the woman must take a bath, and they remain unclean until evening. When a woman has her monthly period, she remains unclean for 7 days. Anyone who touches her is unclean until evening. This is the Bible, everyone. Welcome to the Bible. We reach awkward stuff. Anything on which she sits or lies during her monthly period is unclean. Anyone who touches her bed or anything on which she has sat must wash his clothes and take a bath, and he remains unclean until evening. If a man has sexual intercourse with her during her period, he is contaminated by her impurity and remains unclean for 7 days, and any bed on which he lies is unclean. If a woman has a flow of blood for several days outside her monthly period, or if her flow continues beyond her regular period, she remains unclean as long as the flow continues, just as she is during her monthly period. Any bed on which she lies and anything on which she sits during this time is unclean. Anyone who touches them is unclean and must wash his clothes and take a bath. He remains unclean until evening. After her flow stops, she must wait 7 days, and then she will be ritually clean. On the 8th day she will take 2 doves or 2 pigeons to the priest at the entrance of the tent of the Lord's presence. The priest shall offer one of them as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, and in this way he will perform the ritual of purification for her. The Lord told Moses to warn the people of Israel about their uncleanness, so that they would not defile the tent of his presence, which was in the middle of the camp. If they did, they would be killed. These are the regulations about a man who has a discharge or an emission of semen, a woman during her monthly period, or a man who has sexual intercourse with a woman who is ritually unclean. Oh my gosh, all the unclean, all the awkward private area stuff. Oh my gosh. I'm just gonna go on to chapter 16, the Day of Atonement. Good Lord. The Lord spoke to Moses after the death of the 2 sons of Aaron who were killed when they offered unholy fire to the Lord. He said, "Tell your brother Aaron that only at the proper time is he to go behind the curtain into the most holy place, because that is where I appear in a cloud above the lid on the covenant box. If he disobeys, he will be killed. He may enter the most holy place only after he has brought a young bull for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering." Then the Lord gave the following instructions. Before Aaron goes into the most holy place, he must take a bath and put on the priestly garments, the linen robe and shorts, the belt, and the turban. The community of Israel shall give Aaron 2 male goats for sin offering, and a ram for a burnt offering. He shall offer a bull as a sacrifice to take away his own sins and those of his family. Then he shall take the 2 goats to the entrance of the tent of the Lord's presence. There he shall draw lots, using 2 stones, one marked for the Lord, and the other for Azazel. I don't remember what that name is. Aaron shall sacrifice the goat chosen by lot for the Lord, and offer it as a sin offering. The goat chosen for Azazel shall be presented alive to the Lord, and sent off into the desert to Azazel, in order to take away the sins of the people. When Aaron sacrifices the bull as the sin offering for himself and his family, he shall take a fire pan full of burning coals from the altar, and 2 handfuls of fine incense, and bring them into the most holy place. There in the Lord's presence he shall put the incense on the fire, and the smoke of the incense will hide the lid of the covenant box, so that he will not see it and die. He shall take some of the bull's blood, and with his finger sprinkle it on the front of the lid, and then sprinkle some of it 7 times in front of the covenant box. After that he shall kill the goat for the sin offering for the people, bring its blood into the most holy place, and sprinkle it on the lid, and then in front of the covenant box, as he did with the bull's blood. In this way he will perform the ritual to purify the most holy place from the uncleanness of the people of Israel and from all their sins. He must do this to the tent, because it stands in the middle of the camp, which is ritually unclean. From the time Aaron enters the most holy place to perform the ritual purification until he comes out, there must be no one in the tent. When he has performed the ritual for himself, his family, and the whole community, he must then go out to the altar for burnt offerings and purify it. He must take some of the bull's blood and some of the goat's blood and put it all over the projections of the corners of the altar. With his finger he must sprinkle some of the blood on the altar 7 times. In this way he is to purify it from the sins of the people of Israel and make it holy. The scapegoat. When Aaron has finished performing the ritual to purify the most holy place, the rest of the tent of the Lord's presence, and the altar, he shall consent to the Lord the live goat chosen for Azazel. He shall put both of his hands on the goat's head and confess over it all the evils, sins, and rebellions of the people to Israel, and so transfer them to the goat's head. Then the goat is to be driven off into the desert by a man appointed to do it. The goat will carry all their sins away with him into some uninhabited land. This is at least one place. This is where we get scapegoat from, because they're taking their sins and putting it off onto goat, and so the goat takes over for their sins. So, scapegoat. Yeah, fun times. Then Aaron shall go into the tent, take off the priestly garments that he had put on before entering the most holy place, and leave them there. He must take a bath in a holy place and put on his own clothes. After that he shall go out and offer the burnt offering to remove his own sins, and those of the people. He shall burn on the altar the fat of the animal for the sin offering. The man who drove the goat into the desert of I'll take that back. He shall burn on the altar the fat of the animal for the sin offering. The man who drove the goat into the desert to Azazel must wash his clothes and take a bath before he comes back into camp. The bull and the goat used for the sin offering, whose blood was brought into the most holy place to take away sin, shall be carried outside the camp and burned. Skin, meat, and intestines shall all be burned. The one who burns them must wash his clothes and take a bath before he returns to camp. Observing the Day of Atonement. The following regulations are to be observed for all time to come. On the 10th day of the 7th month, the Israelites and the foreigners living among them must fast and must not do any work. On that day, the ritual is to be performed to purify them from all their sins, so that they will be ritually clean. That day is to be a very holy day, one on which they fast and do not work at all. These regulations are to be observed for all time to come. The high priest, properly ordained and consecrated to succeed his father, is to perform the ritual purification. He shall put on the priestly garments and perform the ritual to purify the most holy place, the rest of the tent of the Lord's presence, the altar, the priests, and all the people of the community. These regulations are to be observed for all time to come. This ritual must be performed once a year to purify the people of Israel from all their sins. So Moses did as the Lord had commanded. And I think I'm just going... I'll do 17. Chapter 17. The Sacredness of Blood. The Lord commanded Moses to give Aaron and his sons and all the people of Israel the following regulations. An Israelite who kills a cow or a sheep or a goat as an offering to the Lord anywhere except at the entrance of the tent of the Lord's presence has broken the law. He has shed blood and shall no longer be considered one of God's people. I take that back. Kills a cow or sheep or goat as an offering to the Lord. Okay. So you can kill it and eat it, sort of thing. But if you're killing it as an offering to the Lord, and it's not in front of the temple, the tent, then no. The meaning of this command is that the people of Israel shall now bring to the Lord the animals which they used to kill in the open country. They shall now bring them to the priest at the entrance of the tent, and kill them as fellowship offerings. The priest shall throw the blood against the sides of the altar at the entrance of the tent, and burn the fat to produce an odor that is pleasing to the Lord. The people of Israel must no longer be unfaithful to the Lord by killing their animals in the fields as sacrifices to the goat demons. People of Israel must keep this regulation for all time to come. Any Israelite or any foreigner living in the community who offers a burnt offering or any other sacrifice as an offering to the Lord anywhere except at the entrance of the tent shall no longer be considered one of God's people. If any Israelite or any foreigner living in the community eats meat with blood still in it, the Lord will turn against him and no longer consider him one of his people. The life of every living thing is in the blood, and that is why the Lord has commanded that all blood be poured out on the altar to take away the people's sins. Blood, which is life, takes away sins. Love how they simplify that. That is why the Lord has told the people of Israel that neither they nor any foreigner living among them shall eat any meat with blood still in it. If any Israelite or any foreigner living in the community catches an animal or a bird which is ritually clean, he must pour its blood out on the ground and cover it with dirt. The life of every living thing is in the blood, and that is why the Lord has told the people of Israel that they shall not eat any meat with blood still in it, and that anyone who does so will no longer be considered one of his people. Any person, Israelite or foreigner, who eats meat from an animal that has died a natural death or has been killed by wild animals must wash his clothes, take a bath, and wait until evening before he is ritually clean. If he does not, he must suffer the consequences. Debating one more. I'll read 18. 18, and then we'll call it. So, forbidden sexual practices. So glad I chose to go into 18. Well, better than starting with that next time. The Lord told Moses to say to the people of Israel, I am the Lord your God. Do not follow the practices of the people of Egypt, where you once lived, or of the people in the land of Canaan, where I am now taking you. Obey my laws and do what I command. I am the Lord your God. Follow the practices and the laws that I give you. You will save your life by doing so. I am the Lord. The Lord gave the following regulations. Do not have sexual intercourse with any of your relatives. Okay. Oh, well, that's why that sort of thing is found. Ah, hillbillies. Trouble. Do not disgrace your father by having intercourse with your mother. You must not disgrace your own mother. Do not disgrace your father by having intercourse with any of his other wives. Do not have intercourse with your sister or your stepsister, whether or not she was brought up in the same house with you. Okay, can I say one thing, and it's going to sound weird? Honestly, I think if a brother and sister are that interested in each other, honestly, love. Like, I can understand not with your mother sort of thing, or some of the other relatives. I can get that, but I don't know. I'm a little bit more open to that whole concept of, you know, being with someone who you're related to in some way or another. And my thinking with it is that if you're going with the whole creationism thing, then according to that, with Adam and Eve and such, we all are related. Like we are all from the same sort of gene pool. So technically we're all related. It's just how close the relation is. So like I can see not with people who are like related above you sort of thing. Like if on your family tree they are above you and they're like nowhere near your age sort of thing. But like, do you get what I'm saying? Um, there's not much more that I can say for myself. if you think that's weird and that's gross and oh my god, how could you say such things or think such things, whatever. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. And I'm sure there's plenty of people who have those same sorts of, oh my god, that's disgusting thoughts about homosexuals, and they want to deny their rights and their happiness. And if you're one of those people, I am sorry that you feel that way. I am a little bit more open minded to such things. There are some things which I will be like, that's not okay, like relations with animals, because it's not, I don't know. I'm just gonna go back to the reading the stuff. Do not discuss, make sure, yeah, catching up. Do not have intercourse with your sister or your stepsister, whether or not she was brought up in the same house with you. Do not have intercourse with your granddaughter. Yeah, no. That would be a disgrace to you. Do not have intercourse with a half-sister. She, too, is your sister. Do not have intercourse with an aunt, whether she is your father's sister or your mother's sister. Do not have intercourse with your uncle's wife. She, too, is your aunt. Well, how about the fact that it's your uncle's wife? So that's adultery. Do not have intercourse with your daughter-in-law or with your brother's wife. Again, adultery. Do not have intercourse with the daughter of your granddaughter, with the daughter or granddaughter of a woman with whom you have had intercourse. Okay, they may be related to you, and that would be incest. Do not take your wife's sister as one of your wives as long as your wife is living. Do not have intercourse with a woman during her monthly period because she is ritually unclean. Do not have intercourse with another man's wife. That would make you ritually unclean. Do not hand over any. Well, it might make you dead. Um, do not have intercourse with them. Do not hand over any of your children to be used in the worship of the god Molech, because that would bring disgrace on the name of God the Lord. No man is to have sexual relations with another man. God hates that. No man or woman is to have a sexual relationship with an animal. That perversion makes you ritually unclean. Okay, again, okay, so this would be one of the things that people would point to for no homosexuality, but part of thought. One of the things that the Bible, when it's talking about some of these sexual relations, it's like you've noticed with some of the other parts that I've already been talking about today. It's talked about Molech, or worshiping demon goats. And there are things that they would do. I mean, heck, they made a golden calf and worshipped it. So there were things that they were doing that other religions were doing. So maybe with some of these things, like even with some of the family stuff, like sure, there are some of those things where it's like, yeah, and then there are other things where it's like, I'm a little bit more fuzzy and open-minded on it, but I can still understand that sort of stuff being weird, and a lot of you can. And maybe it's talking more about there's not a loving, committed relationship. So, like, it definitely is saying something against incest, and I can see that. But when it's talking about the man having sexual relations with a man, well, that's because it was focusing on the pleasurable and not on the committed relationship. Uh, I like to believe the best. I believe in a loving and forgiving God, and I think that if there is love, He's not about to put that down. Lust, yeah. Greed, yeah. Love, no. So you can have your opinions, I can have mine. We can disagree with each other and still be friends. And we'll both find things that we were right about and wrong about when we get wherever we're going. So, nomads, do not make yourself unclean by any of these acts, for that is how the pagans made themselves unclean. It's kind of, yeah, that's kind of what I was saying. Those pagans who lived in the land before you and whom the Lord is driving out, so that you can go in. Their actions made the land unclean, and so the Lord is punishing the land and making it reject the people who lived there. They did all these disgusting things and made the land unclean. But you must not do them. All of you, whether Israelites or foreigners living with you, must keep the Lord's laws and commands, and then the land will not reject you, as it rejected the pagans who lived there before you. You know that whoever does any of these disgusting things will no longer be considered one of God's people. And the Lord said, Obey the commands I give you, and do not follow the practices of the people who lived in the land before you, and do not make yourself unclean by doing any of these things. I am the Lord your God. Okay, before I completely end things, there is one final thought that I want to leave you with, and that is that God can be relatively reasoned with and persuaded. He does have a little bit of open-mindedness about him, even with his omnipotence. And I can give you an example. I think it was Abraham. There was or maybe it was, I don't remember who it was. But I remember the general stuff, and that is that there was a town that was going to be destroyed, and whoever it was that was talking to him, I'm going to say Abraham for now, but I could be wrong. Abraham was like, what if there are 100 people who are innocent? And so God's like, okay, if there are 100 people who are innocent, I won't destroy it. And he's like, well, maybe there aren't 100, but maybe there are 50. All right, if there are 50, I won't destroy it. Maybe there aren't 50, but there might be 10. If there are 10, I won't destroy it. What if there is at least one innocent person in there? Like, if there's an innocent person in there, then you are killing an innocent person. And he's like, okay, if there's even one innocent person in there, then I won't destroy them. So I think that God can be influenced. Now, it's not like a influence like you and I, but influenced to love. Cuz look at it this way. Um so the universe, God exists, the Big Bang, that sort of thing. God creates the angels. Well, he has this hole, he has this need. So he makes the angels to love him and to serve him. But that doesn't quite do it because, well, they have to love him. That's how he made them. They have to serve him. That's how he made them. So it's not quite satisfying. So he makes, you know, he makes the world and the seas and the stars, and he makes this big, beautiful place, and it's great. And, he finds something missing, so he makes it. He makes the animals, and, well, they're good, and he makes man. He doesn't declare man as good. He says it's not good for man to be alone. And it's because he makes man like himself, and he realized it wasn't good for him to be alone, which is why he made man. But it's not good for man to be alone. So he made woman. And he made man and made woman so that they could fulfill each other. Because it's not good for woman to be alone, but she has man for that. Just and don't sidetrack, just track with me. So, and then he told them to, they can have all this stuff. It's all theirs. They just have to tend the garden and not eat the apple from the tree of knowledge. So, as far as I'm concerned, humanity and God's relationship with humanity is very experimental. Now, there is a lot of time and a lot of experience that God has had, and I think his overall goal with us is they mentioned it in Bruce Almighty. How do you make somebody love you without forcing them to? Or how do you make somebody choose to love you? Something like that. And that, and I forget what Morgan Freeman God's response was, but it was something, words to the effect of, I've been trying to figure that out for centuries. So I think that everything that God does with us is trying to figure out how to make us happy and how to get us to make Him happy. And doing so through things like love and servitude. And I know servitude has a semi-negative connotation, not quite the most positive, but you know, being a servant like you would serve somebody that you love. You take care of their needs. So I think that as time goes on, God might adjust some of his ways and his thinkings and his thoughts to be more focused on love. Be like, okay, this is how it was, and I thought this was a thing, but now that's not so bad. Now, granted, there are bad things that chances are he's not going to change his mind on those ever. Murdering, stealing, adultery. Like, those are things that I don't think his mind's going to change on those. Because if you love someone, you wouldn't murder them. If you love someone, you wouldn't steal something that they had. If anything, you'd ask for their permission or you would trade for it. And if you loved someone, you would not sleep with somebody else. You would not. And also, if you love someone, you wouldn't have relations outside of the relationship that you are in. In which case, the other person would be raping. And if you loved someone, you wouldn't rape them. So, I think, but things like homosexuality, well, if it's just intercourse and let's all please ourselves, then yeah, God's not going to be for that because that's not love, that's lust. But if it's actually two, like a man and a man or a woman and a woman, and they legitimately love each other, then I feel like he wouldn't see anything wrong with that. And I think that there are a number of things that are in the Old Testament that, having had several thousand years to mull things over, I think there are some things that, if that's how God felt about it, I think he has changed his mind. Because if God can change his mind from just plain murdering a whole town to, well, if they're, well, not murdering, to destroying a whole town, to if there's 100 people, I'll spare it. If there's 50 people, I'll spare it. If there's 10 people, I'll spare it. If there's even one person, I'll spare it. I think if he can change his mind on that sort of thing at the suggestion of a man, then I think there are still other things that he could change his mind about. There are things that he could learn. Now, there's plenty that he's probably already learned, and there's probably not that much that any of us could teach him per se. Like if you want to go and be like, well, I think that we should have guns and teach God that we should have guns, or that we shouldn't have guns, or whatever issue. I don't think that's it. I think it's more on leveling with God and reasoning with him. Not saying this is what you should do, like a lot of people do over things like Facebook and social media, but be like, well, how about this? And why not? And like a peaceful, I'm blowing into the mic, a peaceful debate seeking the best possible outcome. Not trying to convince him of your way, but either trying to be like, hey, this is a good idea, or you be like, okay, that's why it's not a good idea. So I just wanted to leave you with that thought of, I think that we have a loving, forgiving, and a relatively open-minded God. And I think those are all things that are what make him so great. That's what make him the kind of God that I can believe in. Random side note, I say he, that's just the pronoun that I've gotten used to, so don't take anything by it. Yeah, just wanted to give that side note. So, alright, with all of that being said, this ran quite a bit longer than I had intended, but I'm, if you've watched for this long, I'm glad that you took the time to watch and to listen to my perspective. If you have any comments on it, feel free to leave it in the comments. If it's just going to be hate and bash, I'm sorry that you feel that way. But with all of that being said, thank you all for watching. Like and favorite if you enjoyed, and subscribe to become a VIP today. And I will see you all next time. Have a great day.